In 1349, a massive earthquake struck Rome. When the ground stopped shaking, a large section of the southern wall of the Colosseum had collapsed into a pile of rubble, roughly a third of the structure, gone in seconds. We're talking about massive travertine blocks, some weighing several tons each, crashing down and scattering across the ground. But this wasn't just bad luck. The earthquake exploited a fatal flaw that had been built into the Colosseum from day one. Here's the problem. The Colosseum sits on the site of Emperor Nero's artificial lake. When Emperor Vespasian chose this location in 72 AD, it was a symbolic gesture, returning Nero's palace grounds to the Roman people. Nero had been one of Rome's most despised emperors, and Vespasian wanted to erase his legacy by giving his private pleasure grounds back to the public. But it created a nightmare for Roman engineers. They had to drain an entire lake and build on waterlogged, unstable ground. The northern half of the Colosseum rests on solid volcanic rock. Stable, strong, reliable. But the southern half? That sits on soft, silty soil from the drained lakebed. When the Romans built the foundation, they dug about 30 feet deep and constructed massive concrete walls over 40 feet high to compensate for the unstable ground. They used an estimated 100,000 cubic meters of travertine stone, held together with 300 tons of iron clamps. It took nearly a decade of constant labor by thousands of workers and prisoners of war to complete the construction. It was an engineering marvel, but they couldn't change the geology underneath. So when that 1349 earthquake hit, the soft southern soil acted like jelly, amplifying the tremor. The northern side, anchored on volcanic rock, held firm. The southern side, sitting on that unstable lakebed soil, couldn't handle the stress. The entire southern external wall shattered and came crashing down. Contemporary accounts describe churches collapsing across Rome, towers falling, thousands dying. But here's where the story gets interesting. That massive pile of rubble, thousands of tons of pre-cut travertine limestone, didn't just sit there. It became Rome's biggest quarry. After the collapse, Renaissance Rome was booming with construction projects. Popes were building churches, noble families were erecting palaces, and everyone needed building materials. Stone was expensive to quarry and transport from distant sites like Tivoli, requiring teams of oxen and weeks of labor. Why go through all that when you had a mountain of perfectly good travertine just lying there? It was free, it was already cut to size, and it was sitting right in the middle of the city. The fallen stones were systematically carted away over the following centuries. But people didn't stop there. They started actively dismantling parts of the remaining structure. Those thousands of pockmarks you see on the Colosseum's walls today, those are from medieval metal hunters, hacking out the 300 tons of iron clamps that held the stones together, leaving the structure even weaker. Bronze and iron were incredibly valuable in medieval times, worth far more than the stone itself. These metal scavengers would spend days chiseling around each clamp, extracting every last piece of metal they could find. Some of Rome's most famous buildings were constructed using stolen Colosseum stone: St. Peter's Basilica, Colosseum stone; the Palazzo Farnese, one of Rome's grandest Renaissance palaces, Colosseum travertine; the Palazzo Venezia, Palazzo Cancelleria, steps leading up to St. Peter's, hospitals, bridges, fortifications, all built with recycled materials from the ancient amphitheatre. The Barberini family alone took over 200 cartloads of stone from the Colosseum in the 1630s. Imagine, 200 cartloads from just one family for just one set of construction projects. Pope Sixtus V even had plans in the 1500s to convert the entire Colosseum into a wool factory, with workers housed in the upper levels and the arena floor converted to workshops. Fortunately, he died before that could happen. There are actual records of contracts granting people the legal right to quarry stone from the Colosseum. Notaries would draw up official documents, popes would sign permits, and stone merchants would haggle over prices per cartload. It wasn't considered theft or vandalism. It was legitimate business. The ancient world was viewed as a resource to be exploited, not a heritage to preserve. So when did Romans finally stop plundering their greatest monument for building materials? Pope Benedict XIV declared the Colosseum a sacred site in 1749, believing that Christian martyrs had been killed there. A small cross was erected in the arena, and the building began to be viewed as a holy site rather than a quarry. Suddenly, taking stones from the Colosseum wasn't just vandalism. It was sacrilege. This shift in perception saved what remained. Guards were posted to prevent further theft, and pilgrims began visiting the site to pray rather than to haul away building materials. The 19th century brought serious restoration efforts. Architects began stabilizing the remaining structure with brick supports, some of which are still visible today on the interior. These buttresses were added to the weakened sections to prevent total collapse. Archaeological excavations also began during this period, revealing the underground hypogeum and other hidden structures. Botanists even catalogued over 400 different plant species growing wild in the ruins, many of them exotic plants whose seeds had been brought back to Rome from across the ancient empire centuries earlier. The goal shifted from preservation of materials to preservation of the monument itself. The Colosseum was finally being treated as a treasure worth saving. In the 20th century, Mussolini's government cleared away the medieval buildings that had been constructed around and even inside the Colosseum, wanting to showcase the ancient monument in isolation. Major restoration work was done in the 1930s, and during World War II, the Colosseum was used as a storage depot and shelter, but fortunately survived the war largely intact. Today, the Colosseum receives over 7 million visitors annually and stands as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most recognized structures on Earth. Even half destroyed, the Colosseum is breathtaking. But to truly understand what was lost, we need to imagine what it looked like in its prime. When the Colosseum was completed in 80 AD under Emperor Titus, it was a masterpiece of Roman engineering. It stood about 157 feet tall, roughly the height of a 12-story building. The entire structure could hold between 50,000 to 80,000 spectators, and it was completely symmetrical, forming a perfect ellipse with a complete outer wall circling the entire building. The opening games lasted 100 days and featured thousands of gladiators and the slaughter of over 9,000 animals. The exterior was covered in gleaming white travertine limestone, with 3 stories of arches decorated with columns and statues. Every single archway had a statue, and the whole structure gleamed brilliantly in the Mediterranean sun. The 4th level was a solid wall with windows. Imagine it, pristine, complete, and absolutely massive. At night, torches would illuminate the facade, making it visible from miles away. A beacon of Roman power and engineering prowess. The seating was meticulously organized by social class. Senators and nobility sat closest to the action on marble seats. The middle classes occupied the middle tiers. Common citizens climbed to the upper levels. Women, regardless of class, were restricted to the uppermost seats, the furthest from the arena floor. There was even a massive retractable awning system called the velarium, operated by sailors from the Roman Navy, that provided shade for spectators during the scorching summer months. Beneath the arena floor was the hypogeum, a vast network of tunnels and chambers that housed gladiators and wild animals. Trapdoors and elevators could send fighters or beasts up into the arena for dramatic entrances. The Romans could even flood the arena floor with water for mock naval battles, complete with full-size ships and hundreds of combatants. The whole system was an engineering marvel. For nearly 400 years, the Colosseum hosted gladiatorial contests, animal hunts, public executions, and elaborate staged battles. On a typical day, the morning featured animal hunts with exotic beasts from across the empire. Lions, elephants, bears, and crocodiles. Midday brought public executions. The afternoon was reserved for the main event, gladiatorial combat. It was the entertainment center of the ancient world, and it stood complete, both northern and southern walls intact, for over a millennium before that earthquake changed everything. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about what really happened to the Colosseum, give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. What other ancient mysteries would you like me to explore? And if you want to dive deeper into the fascinating stories behind history's greatest monuments, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. See you in the next one.